All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. I want to welcome you to Spotlights on Thriving Services. In this monthly series, my co-host Gabriella Papp and I shine the spotlight on service organizations so you can see what they have to offer. We hope that our quirky question set will serve not only to inform, but also to entertain. So what can you expect? We'll start with a short overview of the expertise and services of the organization, and then we'll dive into questions on leadership and collaboration and problem solving, and then we'll follow all of that by a quick wrap up. So joining us today is Ruth Pearce. Ruth is the founder of ALLE LLC. Ruth and her partners, Allison Jarrett, Becky Davies, and Irene Poku, support and coach project managers and team members to transform the workplace into a community. An avid proponent of focusing on what works, but still embracing the darker side of life, Ruth starts with character strengths as a powerful way to forge connections between team members and safety. Her vision is to bring the art and science of character strengths and community building to project managers. Based on 20 years of direct experience in the field, supported by extensive study and research in the science of character strengths and positive psychology, Ruth's book, Be a Project Manager, Unlock the Secrets of Strengths-Based Project Management, was published in November of 2018. A few more things about Ruth. She speaks on positive psychology, character strengths, and mindfulness to project management audiences around the world. She's presented to more than 40,000 people through PMI Global and multiple PMI chapters, International Project Management Association, Society for Human Resource Management, projectmanagement.com, and the Society for Women Engineers. Yay, STEM. Got to get that in there. Ruth offers her own group coaching programs for project managers with burnout, is a coach for BetterUp, and has trained coaches with the Center for Coaching certification. She's excited to have 3 LinkedIn learning programs and another on the way about bravery, which sounds super cool. Her motto is be hopeful, be strong, be brave, be curious. So welcome, Ruth. It's really wonderful to have you with us today.
Thank you, Julie. It's really great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Thank you for making my cringeworthy introduction. Every time anyone reads an introduction, I'm like, why can't we just say, and this is Ruth, and she's from ALLE LLC.
Oh, but that's all good stuff. It's all good stuff. I must say, when we met, we were prepping for this webinar, I did go and bookmark all your LinkedIn learning classes, so I'm excited to take them.
Ah, nice.
Yeah. Before we begin, maybe you can just tell the audience really quick, before we get into the services and everything, what ALLE stands for.
Yeah, absolutely. So a few years ago, when I was actually in 2016, when I was forming the company, I was trying to come up with a name and nothing was really appealing to me. And finally, somebody gave me this quote. They were talking about character strengths as being levers to help us to move things and change things in our lives. And I was doing a lot of work with character strengths. And the next day I read the quote by Archimedes, which I'd read before, but it popped up again, of give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I will move the world. There are various versions of that, but
right.
That's the one that I saw that day. And if anyone is a fan of the Big Bang Theory, there's also a whole scene where they talk about using levers and they're trying to change a tire. I know it's nerds changing a tire, a scientist changing a tire. And it just stuck with me. And I was like, well, I can't have a company called A Lever Long Enough. That's just too much of a mouthful, and domain names would be too long. And so I was talking to another friend one day and they said, well, what about just shortening it to ALLE? And so we ended up with ALLE, which is a lever long enough. So we are looking for, we're looking for levers long enough to help our clients and audiences move their world.
That's awesome. Really appreciate that. I thought that was just such an interesting background history to the name of the company. And so that's a really good segue for us to move into, if you can tell us a little bit more about your services, how you can help people in this space of project management.
Yes, so as you mentioned, I was project manager for many years, and I don't know if anyone in the audience can actually remember what day of the week October 9th, 2015 was, or what they were doing on that day. I'm sure at some point I'm either going to meet someone who's a calendar head, and they know what every day of every year is, or I'm going to meet someone for whom that was a very significant day in some way or other. I'd love to be able to say that the significance is it was my husband's birthday, which it was my husband's birthday. And, I remember every precious birthday that we shared together. That isn't why I remember that day, because that was the day that I would say my burnout came to the fore. And I basically stood up and blurted out some pretty ill thought out comments at an offsite meeting at work. And that completely transformed who I was at work, what my responsibilities were, what I was, who I was working with, who worked for me, and so on. Essentially, I went from a very big team to a team of one, which was me. And so that was a very significant time for me. And at the time, I didn't realize how significant that burnout was. So I started learning about coaching, and I learned about via character strengths. I did a certificate in positive psychology. I've done all sorts of other stuff around neuroscience and things like that to understand how we work, how our brains tick. And it's all come together over a few years of speaking and going out and talking to people and hearing their stories. Is that I woke up one day and I was like, well, I should be focusing on burnout and project managers. I speak to project managers all the time, and I'm hearing it more and more and more. And then these three partners of mine were interested in getting involved in that, because they have specialties that kind of supplement that topic. So Becky has been a nurse for 10 years, but she's very much into health and wellness and how you can use mindfulness and how you can use physical exercise and everything to improve your well-being. We've got Alison Jarrett, who is ex-Air Force, ex-US Air Force. She was a master resilience trainer. And so she offers that resiliency focus and helps us build up. So once you've recovered from burnout, how do you make sure that you stay on an even keel going forward? And then we have Irene Poku, who's actually in the UK. She's originally from Ghana, and she's very interested in authentic leadership. And so once you've done all these various pieces, if you were to sort of follow our whole arc of programs, then you're going to end up with, some leadership coaching and really understanding how to bring yourself into the mix and all of that. And so we have multiple programs. They're all built around the idea of coaching. We always share some information. We always have tools that back up what we do, so that, you can see where you're starting from, what your strengths are. A lot of people who know me know that we use the VIA character strengths assessment, which is a fully researched, science-based, evidence-based, peer-reviewed assessment of what our strengths are. We're also now using a tool called the multidimensional inventory of personal intelligences. Similarly, 10 years of research have gone into that. It is from Adaptimist Insights. Jeff Crane has been researching all of this around emotional intelligence, social intelligence, and motivational intelligence for the last 10 years at Trent University in Canada. And it has this amazing tool that really helps us to build people's capabilities and competencies as they move forward. And so we're pulling all these levers, we're pulling, well, I say levers, we're pulling levers and really helping people to figure out what they've already got in their toolbox that means that they can live effectively and positively and can handle adversity, that they can deal with what comes at them, putting their best foot forward.
That's great. And I know I can speak from personal experience. I've had two very close colleagues recently who, decided to take a career break because of burnout. And it's highly prevalent now in this great rethink era that we're in. People taking a step back and realizing, hey, it's not worth it, right? Get yourself back. And it's so prevalent right now, and such good information for where we're at right now. It's very important.
And I walked away from project management in 2016, and I have not gone back. I've dabbled in it a bit. I have projects within my own company,
Sure.
but my focus now is on coaching and helping other people, with a goal to making it possible for people to maintain their careers, you know, and not get to that point that I did,
Right.
of having to walk away.
Right. That's awesome. Well, thank you for that work. It's so important. Really appreciate that. So maybe you can point out a little bit. I know we talked about ALLE Ever long enough, and I know you provided some resources here for the viewers to kind of check out on their own if they want to. Maybe you can talk about that for just a minute.
Yeah, so we actually have multiple websites, but our main overall website is allellc.org, where you can find out more information about us, but also about the services and things that we provide. We've started meeting on LinkedIn Live the first Wednesday of every month. The four of us come to, if we're all available, the four of us come together, and whoever's available, I should say, comes together and we talk about a topic. So we launched that in May. Our next one is actually on the 1st of June, and we're excited about that because we're going to be talking about why the language we use matters. Words matter, all of that kind of stuff. So that's going to be, that's prompted by Alison Jarrett, because she's really fascinated by how our words influence the way we think and behave.
So interesting.
And then we are launching, we did some interviews with people around their burnout experiences and talk to people about what they might need in order to recover from burnout or prevent burnout, and came to the conclusion that what we'd originally planned, which was like a program where you would sign up and come at regular intervals for the program, wasn't necessarily going to work, because scheduled something, it can feel very overwhelming to people who are already feeling a little burned out. So what we've decided to do instead, based on the feedback we received, is to start a drop-in program. We're very community-based. We have a community of practice in via character strengths. You know, you mentioned that our goal is to turn workplaces into communities. And so we thought, well, okay, so what if we built a community? Because one of the telltale signs for people of being able to recover from burnout is to feel that they've got good support and a good community around them. And not everyone does have. So it's like, if we focus on that aspect, we're going to offer 3 times a week, where at 3 times on different days, when people can drop in to group coaching. And so they'll get the support from the rest of the group, and they'll get the support from the coach. There'll always be at least one of us in the room, and probably more. And it's 60 to 90 minutes, depending on, you know, how the flow is going. You can drop in, drop out. You could just come for 45 minutes. And everyone is going to do one-on-one coaching session before the group, you know, before they go into the group stuff, so that we can go over their via character strengths assessment, we can do their mindfulness assessment, we can do various things and discuss with them what they want to get out of the coaching, so that as we're building forward on the program, you know, we're incorporating the feedback that we hear from people about what they need.
Awesome.
And then,
that's great, because I imagine that, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, go on, Julia.
Well, I just imagine that would evolve, right? As we continue to evolve in the workplace and our new normals are set up, that's great. You're taking the feedback, because it's probably going to evolve.
Yes, exactly.
And you'll evolve with it. Yeah, that's awesome.
And we'll use some other tools. As I say, we use a couple of assessments and things like that, but we also have a tool that allows us to kind of drip feed activities for people to do, very small bites. Because again, when you're burned out, you know, anything too big feels like too much and you don't want to do it, but it, you know, it's going to send out reminders and everything and say, okay, this is something for you to do today as a mood booster or an energy booster or whatever it might be. So yeah, a whole sort of suite of things for people to be able to use and sort of dip into and dip out of as they want to and as it's helpful to them. Yeah,
that's great. Well, thank you for that information about ALLE. It's super interesting. And like I said, really appreciate the work. It's so important now, just in the environment we're in. So we can pivot now into our questions so we can learn a little bit more about ALLE. We'll go into the first one. So, you know, as our industry evolves and, you know, we kind of started this, I think, pre-pandemic. So as the industry evolves, but also now our new normals evolve, so do the challenges we face. So we're interested to know, which superhero or role model would you call on to face the biggest challenges for PMOs today, and why?
So I've been thinking about this one. So my favorite superhero is one that most people won't have heard of, which is Lunchbox Boy. So
Okay.
Lunchbox Boy is he was actually in a comedy program, and I think it's Whose Line Is It Anyway is what it's called, where the four people stand up and they do miming and stuff. There's an American version, there's also a British version, and that one of the people that used to be in that show was a crossover. So he used to be in the US version and he was in the UK version, and they did a mime where the person had to guess which superheroes came to the party, and he was Lunchbox Boy, and he always had an apple and a piece of cheese and, you know, some whole grain bread and things like that. And one of the things I've learned on projects that is really beneficial, and this is in the book, is that making sure that people have good food on projects is really helpful, especially if you're going to do weekend work and things like that. So I think PMOs could really help sort of portfolio managers and project managers to plan those experiences where there's an extra push in a way that becomes a more positive experience. So we had in one of our projects, I had two friends who loved to do catering. And so we used to have them cater for us. And whenever we had to work in the office on a weekend, they would tell us what the theme was going to be. So it's going to be Mexican, you know, what would you like? And we would pick out some dishes and they would make these dishes. So it was all homemade stuff. And then the team themselves would bring in desserts and things according to their tradition, because we had a very mixed or sort of very mixed group of people from France and India and all sorts of places, and people would bring things in that sort of were traditional desserts for them. And people said after the program was over that made all the difference, because so often they'd been on programs where at those times for an extra push it was curly deli sandwiches and pizza, you know, and there's just even if you love pizza, there's only so much pizza you can eat. So and so that really paid dividends, because we even had people gate crashing those weekend sessions. You know, they would come in to work because they knew we were doing some particular dish that day, and they'd be like, oh, I came in because I thought, you know, I could catch up on the work that needed to be done, and they weren't even scheduled to be there. So yeah, Lunchbox Boy would be my PM hero.
That's awesome. I love it. I didn't know about Lunchbox Boy, so I'm excited to learn something new today. It's awesome. And I love Whose Line. My kids love that show. The American version is a little bit not as family friendly. I don't know what the British version is like, but
the British version is not terribly family friendly.
Okay. Watch it anyway.
My favorite scene was the one where the same guy who was Lunchbox Boy, I wish I could remember his name, I should have looked it up, he had to change a diaper with someone else's hands, you know, so they did that thing. He put his hands behind his back, they put their hands through, and he was telling them what to do. And obviously it wasn't a baby, it was a doll. But yeah, well, that wasn't very family friendly. I'm pretty sure that doll ended up with a diaper pin in its eye or something like that. So
yeah, but a good show, some good entertainment there. All right, let's move on to the next question. You know, when we're looking to partner with somebody, you know, frequently we want to understand the approaches to problem solving. So tell us, what's your problem solving tagline?
Ooh, we need one, I think, now that you've asked me that question. What's your problem solving tagline? It's something around trusting people, learning to trust that they have the resources to figure things out. I'm not exactly sure what the tagline needs to be, and if anyone in the audience has got any ideas, please share. But coming from a coaching background, you know, we're very much in the mode of you have what you need to get what you need. So you may not know everything you need to know, but you know how to find it, you know, and our job as a coach is to help you decide the best pathway forward. We help you to problem solve, but ultimately people are most effective in their problem solving when they buy into the solution and they have a hand in creating the solution. So it's something around that, you know, the problem solving tagline is the best solution is one that you had a hand in, or something, you know, something like that. But I have to work on that one, Julie. And that's
good foundation we got there, right?
Yeah.
we can have some iterating and refine it, but no, that's great. I mean, really, it's just important to understand what lies behind that, and I think that's some really good feedback. All right, let's move on to the next one. So we've seen a shift from, process-driven methods, project manager as, team member, to more project frameworks and project manager as leader, right?
Mhm.
And so leadership's becoming more associated with that role, and with some of our, project program portfolio management roles where maybe it hasn't been before. So let's say you are making a movie on what it takes to lead. Describe the plot.
Well, I think the movie's actually already been made.
Okay.
So, yes, I'll do a remake of the Tom Hanks movie, Apollo 13. There's a particular part of that, when they know that everything that could go wrong has gone wrong practically. These guys are stuck out in space. They've got limited resources for surviving in space and even more limited resources for getting back. And they're trying to work out what they can do to save them. And it's that having someone in the room who sifts through all the noise and can say, okay, stop all that, let's focus on this idea, but at the same time creates enough open space for people to throw ideas and concerns. And I love the scenes in that movie. There are two scenes that I particularly like, where they're problem solving in the room and they're on the blackboard and he's drawing, the slingshot around the moon, and people are listing all these things like, well, we can't do that because they'll run out of oxygen before, and he's like, yeah, we know there's a bunch of problems. What are our options for solving them? And the other scene I really, really love is when they say they've got to stick a square thing into a round hole using just this, and it's like a spacesuit and duct tape. And I think someone told me once that Apollo 13 is why every space mission has a roll of duct tape. It's because that was so critical to the success of cobbling this stuff together. So I think it's Apollo 13 is the movie, because it's that balance of creating space and yet steering, we don't want the leader to dictate, but we do want the leader to create the framework that stops us with the analysis paralysis and sort of gets us focused on what we can and can't accomplish.
Right. And, had they not been innovative, listened to each other, and had that type of leadership, it might have been a much worse outcome, right?
Yeah. And
I love that movie.
And the way it's played in the movie, the guy who's in charge, I'm blanking on names today, but the guy who's in charge, he also uses humor. Now, I know it's a movie, but we are talking about a movie plot, right? So he uses humor, like at the point when he says, well, why don't we just use the air scrubbers from, the other part of the ship? And they say, because, we never anticipated this contingency, and this one's a square one and this one's a round one. And he says, somebody tell me this isn't a government operation. It's like, there's even in the worst moments, there can be lightness. And I'm being British, we pride ourselves on gallows humor. So, we do try to lighten the mood with a joke around something that other people might feel is not completely appropriate, of course.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy that as well, that he's always balancing this kind of humorous attitude, serious attitude, being really focused, letting things run. He's moving between all of these different roles. And I think it's a really great model for leadership.
Yeah, I think humor is a great tool. I know I use it sometimes to break the tension, right? Because you become so paralyzed if you're faced with something that's really daunting or complex, and it breaks that tension a little bit and lets people free their emotions so that, they can then address the task at hand.
Yes.
So I think it's a powerful tool, and I really like that movie. I saw it back when it came out a while ago, and it stuck with me. So I've
watched it multiple times. There aren't very many movies that I've watched multiple times. My absolute favorite movie is V for Vendetta. I love that movie. I've watched that probably 9 times. I've watched Apollo 13 probably 3 or 4 times, and Moulin Rouge I've watched many times as well.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I've seen it, I've done it, I don't want to watch it again.
Right.
Kind of. So, yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next one. So collaboration is essential to success in any partnership. So if you had to write a book on promoting and sustaining collaboration, what would be the title?
It's not about me, it's not about you, it's about us.
Oh, that's a great one. I like that. Maybe that's your next publishing.
It could be, yeah.
That's an awesome title. Yeah.
I think by publisher standards, it might be a little bit too long, so I'll have to,
Oh, okay.
there has to be a colon in there somewhere or something, right? So, but yeah, something like that. There's a great talk by Peter Anderton, who's a speaker from the UK, where he talks about leadership, and he says there are two components to leadership. One is it's not about you, and the other is it's all about you. And I've always loved that. Again, that sort of juxtaposition of it. As a leader, you're trying to make space for people to contribute the best of themselves to whatever is, whatever the project is. And at the same time, it is about you, because how you put yourself forward influences people's ability to put themselves forward, right? So, there's lots of articles out at the moment about how one of the best traits for a leader is humility. I get frustrated with the best traits, because I think, the best leaders are the people who use their strengths really well and know their limitations, and leverage other people's strengths as well. I don't think it's about having a sort of magic recipe, but I do think the humility thing of recognizing when to step back, when to say, all right, you guys are the experts in this, tell me what you've got, So.
Yeah, that's great. Really good advice. I like it. I do like the title. I'd buy the book if you had one with that title.
Okay.
Even if they think it's too long. All right, let's move on to the next question. So, environmental social governance policies, I think pre-pandemic, we're starting to really get a lot of traction and a lot of talk, and then we kind of shifted, but we're still interested to kind of touch on this with our viewers. Sustainability is a big part of all of that. And so we're interested to know, if receiving an award, how would your customers thank you for influencing their sustainability?
So I think we most influence the sustainability of the individuals by connecting to them to those levers. We're connecting them to things that they can always go back to. So it's one of the things we do during the burnout coaching is we really get back to what are your top character strengths, and what do they mean to you? Because very often what's happening to people when they're burning out, which essentially is they can no longer sustain what they're doing, right? Very often one of the things that's happening to them is they are disconnecting from the things that really matter to them. And one of those sets of things is their character strengths. And I know that when I burned out, my top character strength is appreciation of beauty and excellence. And I was spending more and more time inside and less time outside. And it was a vicious circle that the more time I didn't get out, the worse my mood was. And so the less effective I was. And so the more time I spent indoors trying to catch up on the work that I hadn't done. Whereas if I had just stepped outside, and got a breath of fresh air and listened to the birds and looked at the, I don't know, butterflies or whatever, although of course, sadly, we're rather short of those now. It would have refreshed me and I'd have been more effective. So I think the way we contribute to sustainability is we help people to sustain their effort.
Nice.
And then they can sort of continue to do whatever it is in the face of great challenges. There are huge challenges. As much as COVID meant that, emissions went down, well, the amount of plastic we've thrown out because of medical treatment and packages that are plastic wrapped in plastic, we threw out even more plastic. So it's sort of, we push it at one end and it pops out the other. So it's very hard for people to keep pushing against these things that we need to change. And so always being able to connect back to what makes you strong, I think is really beneficial. And that's what we offer.
That's great. That's great. And I really, the being outside resonates so much with me. I know I may have mentioned on this webinar before, our family has urban chickens. We call them urban chickens because we're not far from the city of Pittsburgh. And I have found that I force myself to go out and feed them, even when I don't want to. Every day we have to feed them, but that few minutes outside, it just changes your whole outlook. Like just even when it's the winter or it's snowing, it's just, there's things that you appreciate that you don't necessarily understand you appreciated until you take a moment and think about it. And I think that's really great advice. So I appreciate that very much. And I like the angle on this question. You know, sometimes it's very literal, and that's why we leave it open. But I really like the angle in sustaining, you know, people. I think that's great.
Thank you.
All right. So, you know, we've mentioned that collaboration is a key factor contributing to success. As a service organization, I'd be willing to bet you've had to work with many different cultures or types of people and of your customers, right? So let's say you're hosting an event to celebrate culture integration with a partner organization. What's the theme?
Putting our best foot forward.
Ah, okay. I like it. I can replace my little graphic on here with feet.
I'll always come back to that because that's kind of what ties together is, and it's one of the things we love about the character strengths is they're universal. So it doesn't matter what cultural or religious or geographic background, what, you know, gender, any,
right.
You name it, you know, it doesn't matter. We've got studies that show that the alignment of the strengths is remarkably strong across different cultures. There's one study that has got 54 nations in it, and the other study has got 75, I think.
Wow.
And what we find is, you know, the patterns of the character strengths are very similar from one place to another. And so it's a very unifying thing. And that's one of the things I found when I was first working with character strengths was I had a team that was a mixture of people from India, so from America in America, from India in America, and then from India in India. And
okay.
so there were different sort of cultural and traditional practices.
Right.
And when we got into the character strengths, everyone could connect with that. And so the other things kind of, they didn't disappear because obviously our differences are still there, but we found these unifying things that we were able to share in, and it sort of crossed boundaries. So, and when we are aware of our character strengths, you know, we're more engaged, we're more effective, we're more productive. And so that is us putting our best foot forward, knowing what these strengths are and really being able to offer the best of ourselves and recognize where maybe we're not the person for something, you know, that someone else has more to offer or can do it more easily or whatever it might be. So
I would think that also helps to build trust and psychological safety in teams, right? To understand that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, one of my favorite things in that was that in all of the people in the team, and we had a very large team, only one person had humor in there as a top 5 strength.
Interesting.
And discovering that, he shared that with everyone. About 80% of the team voluntarily took the assessment. It's a free assessment. They took the assessment and he volunteered that humor would come out top, which didn't surprise him in the slightest. And it was a real aha moment for a lot of his colleagues. He was a business analyst, or probably still is a business analyst. And they were like, oh, okay, this explains some of the sort of friction there had been between them and him, because they were all very high in honesty. And so they were taking his humorous quips and things literally. And they thought he wasn't really taking his job very seriously. And once they made room for his humor, and he was aware how he kind of needed to flag it as, you know, I'm just joking now, that changed the relationship, you know. And so all of those things were just amazing because we came to understand each other better. You know, we came to understand what drives us and how to motivate each other and how to connect with each other. And who to go to when you needed something that maybe was not one of your high strengths.
And that helps.
If you needed, yeah,
it helps build everybody's empathy too, I think, you know, which is so important. Having those experiences, realizing that you know, made this kind of decision and conclusion, and you maybe didn't have all the information that you needed, right, can help in future situations. So that's really good. That's awesome. Putting our best foot forward. I like it. All right. Next question. So one of the purposes of the PMO leader is building community, which you talked a lot about that. ALLE focuses on that quite a bit too. But this doesn't happen overnight or in isolation. So next question is, we're curious to know, what would be your signature song for what it takes to build a community?
That's a difficult one. So I've been thinking about, you know, what's the signature song? Oh, maybe this one still works. So, but the one that keeps coming to mind is Teardrop by Massive Attack. It was actually the theme music for House, the television series about the quirky doctor. And there's a whole story about, I love the story about Hugh Laurie auditioning for that role. But that's a different story for a different day. So yeah, they pardon?
I said, sure.
Yeah, so I really love that music personally because of the sort of rhythm and the beat to it, but I love the title of it because I think it embraces something that we try to avoid. It's one of the things that I'm very focused on at the moment, is that I think we've developed a little bit of a habit in the West in particular, and the US very much so, of trying to encourage everybody to feel good all the time, you know, and look at the positive and see the silver lining. And, you know, and some days, excuse my French, but some days you just feel like crap, you know, and that title of Teardrop conjures up for me all sorts of images of, you know, crying uncontrollably and not necessarily knowing why, crying at a time when you think, why am I crying? You know, this isn't, which obviously is not knowing why, but sometimes crying when you don't think crying's the natural response. You know, you'd to laugh or smile, but instead you cry. You know, the visual of a teardrop dropping into other water kind of thing. And so I think, again, making space for the uncomfortable is what that conjures up for me. And I think that is huge in a community. When the community can share uncomfortable things and feel safe doing so, it is a community. Any group of people can come together and share nice, jolly stuff, you know, and say, oh, great, you know, you're keeping motivated or whatever. It's when you can say, I'm not feeling so good today, and people want to listen and they want to support you and they want to lift you up. That's when you're in community.
Right. I totally agree with that. And you know, there's been a lot of talk about this. As you were talking, I was thinking about, man, I've been seeing a lot of things come up in my LinkedIn feed lately, just folks being more vulnerable, talking about mental health and other things that are close to their heart that, you know, are related to the workplace or how, you know, how they perform at work, but are much, much more personal than what we would typically see on that platform. And it struck me like, wow, like, have we crossed a turning point where now we're destigmatizing those types of thoughts? We don't have to be perfect all the time. We don't have to be happy all the time. It's okay to not be okay, you know, and to get help for it. So that's awesome. I like that notion, and I appreciate that. Okay, we've come to our last question, and I will admit this one's purely just for fun. But we like to ask everybody, if your company were a food, what would it be and why?
A raspberry.
Raspberry, okay.
Yeah, they're tasty, healthy, good for practically everyone. Low in carbs, even though they're a fruit.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you can make jokes about raspberries as well, about the sound and all of that. So there's some humor in there. And there's something very there's something about the shape of them and the way that they're put together, all these little bits. You know, it's like there's the seeds and there's the little bits that hold the seeds, and I don't know what you call those, that are kind of.
They're called drupelets.
Drupelets. Well, thank you for that. I've learned something else new today. So
I used to work on a raspberry farm. No joke.
Really? That's amazing. So yes, so the drupelets, I feel like that's what we provide is we've got lots, we're integrating lots of things at ALLE LLC that, you know, each one is a druplet. So we're not just one thing, we're these multiple things that integrate really well, and when put together, you know, make something effective and delicious. I hope our stuff is delicious. As you said, this is kind of a sort of goofy question, but yeah, originally I was going to say Indian food or something like that, but then as we've been talking, I was like, raspberry. It's a raspberry. It's fresh, you know, it's healthy, and it's got lots of bits. So that's us.
That's great. I love that one, and I appreciate that. Given my background.
I
You
can't
never
believe
knew. I
you
never
worked on a
knew.
Raspberry Fund. That's crazy.
I
Yeah,
know. Well, I did it, college summer job, home. There was a local farm, and that's what I did. And who would have thought 20 years later, I'd be pulling that back out of the hat.
yeah, absolutely.
So it's great. All right. Well, that wraps up the questions. So the official question set. So now I'd encourage our audience, if you have any questions for Ruth, to put them in the chat or put them into Q&A, and we can get those answered. But I do have a couple that came up kind of beforehand, so we'll start with those. But we were interested to know, can you say a few more words about your motto and what it means to you? I thought that was a really interesting motto.
My be hopeful, be strong, be brave, be
Yes.
curious. Yeah, so that partly started with the research I did for the book. So when I was getting ready to write the book that you mentioned earlier, Be a Project Motivator, Unlock the Secrets of Strengths-Based Project Management, I had a lot of, I'm sorry, there are fire trucks going past my house. So, okay, I'll just wait for that to go past.
The beauty of our world now, right?
Yes, so the fire truck is chasing the motorbikes that have been going up and down the road. So I've lost my thread. Oh yeah, be hopeful. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, so I was doing research. I had lots of people take the VIA character strengths assessment as part of the research for the book. And at the early stages showed certain strengths coming up as higher in project managers than other people, and hope was one of them. Now, as I got more people who were project managers to take the survey, that actually changed. So I need a second edition of the book because it needs an update. We still are low on social intelligence though. So, maybe I should incorporate that into my motto. But the be hopeful thing, it seems very, very appropriate to project managers. So hope is that combination of seeing the possibility for the future and coming up with steps to get there. It isn't just, I love the work by Shane Lopez, Making Hope Happen, because it isn't just about crossing your fingers and being optimistic. It is about taking steps, making it more likely to come true. And I think that's very much a project manager's role, is to keep the goal in sight and to help people see how that goal is possible. Sometimes we don't necessarily pick up quickly enough that it's no longer possible, but that's, a separate issue.
Right.
Then the be strong really relates to that, find out what your strengths are and hone them, practice with them. People often ask me, what are the best strengths for a leader, or what are the best strengths for a project manager? And my answer is the same for everybody, which is your top strengths really used well. So know when it is that you're using them to best effect, use them in new ways that you haven't thought of before. Be sensitive to when you might be overusing them or using them inappropriately with someone, because that's situational, and it's going to depend a little bit on the other person's strengths as well, or the group strengths or whatever. And then the be brave, that really came out from when I took the VIA assessment the very first time I took it, and it's remained this way forever. Bravery came out as my number 2 character strength. And the first time I took it, before I knew more about the character strengths, I thought that it was hocus pocus, and there was something wrong with the assessment, because all of my life I've struggled to manage anxiety. I've always been a very anxious person, and I was like, how could I possibly be brave? How could you describe someone who's constantly on the edge of a sort of nervous breakdown? Not a nervous breakdown, I shouldn't say that, I shouldn't be so flippant, but constantly on the edge of what feels like a panic attack. How could I possibly be brave? And then when I was working with a coach on that to understand the results, they said, well, what's bravery to you? And I said, well, it's like running into burning buildings and things like that. And they said, have you ever heard the definition of bravery as being uncomfortable and doing it anyway? And I realized that is my life, is that everything I've done, there's been a lot of discomfort. And I've said, you know what, I'm still going to do it. I'm going to get up there. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do avoid it. And it also reminded me, and now the cops are going by, it also reminded me of what my father said to me the very first time I gave a public presentation. And he was a really, really expert presenter. And I said to him, you just don't understand how nerve-wracking it is. And he said, well, I don't know what you mean, because I'm always nervous when I speak. And I was like, are you out of your mind? I've seen you speak multiple times, you know, you're obviously not nervous. And he said, I am nervous. I'm just comfortable with being uncomfortable. It is part of the responsibility to your audience to, you know, it reflects that you're taking it seriously. So that be comfortable with being uncomfortable was really meaningful to me as well. So the be brave came up there. And I think many people are braver than they think they are, you know, that they do more things in the face, and they see other people as brave. So I want to get to raise people's awareness of how you're being brave when, you know, anytime it's uncomfortable and you do it anyway, there's some bravery involved. And then be curious. I think there's so much value in not assuming that you know and asking more questions. You know, that so many things that get us into trouble are where we're making assumptions. And it might be assumptions about what's going on, or it might be assumptions about what someone else believes. Someone said something to me last night, and they said very matter-of-factly that, you know, this person they were talking about was obviously less than some of the rest of us. And they gave me some attributes as to why. And they just made this assumption that, of course, I feel the same way, right? That someone who wears this and does that and has a tattoo and all of that kind of thing, which, by the way, I have a tattoo.
I do too.
So there you go. Is it of a raspberry?
No, it's not of a raspberry.
So yeah, she was making assumptions that, you know, everyone sees it the same way, that this person's kind of hopeless. And so I think being more curious, you know, she could have said to me, well, what do you think about someone who wears this? And then I'd be able to say, oh, no, I don't think it means one thing or another. But instead she assumed I was going to have the same point of view as her. And yeah, we have a lot of arguments and misunderstandings, and on projects, you know, misdirection of projects, because somebody didn't say, well, let me just make sure, what do you mean by that?
Right.
So,
right. Assumptions are a big passion of mine. I just gave a talk last month on communication assumptions and how you can avoid them and be aware that you're making them, because there's so much unconscious bias that goes into that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the event you mentioned earlier with one of your colleagues talking about words and how they affect people, that I'm really interested in, because it kind of goes along with that. We make so many assumptions that we don't even realize. So
absolutely.
And
there's some great work by Josh Ramirez, who's on the West Coast in the US. He's the founder of the Neuro and Behavioral Project Management Institute, or the Institute for Behavioral and Neuro and Behavioral Project Management, NBPMI. He's put together a whole program for project managers that relates to things like our unconscious biases and the models we use to answer things, you know, and our type 1, type 2 thinking, according to the model by Kahneman, of, you know, there are certain things that we just do automatically by recognizing patterns, and that we want to be able to pause every so often and say, well, you know, am I putting the right things together and coming out with the right answer? And the course is absolutely fascinating. I recommend it to people if they're interested in that kind of stuff. It's a self-paced course online. But yeah, all of those things, I'm fascinated by that. And it comes into the coaching as well. You know, what assumptions are you making when you, or what's another possibility? I love that question for coaching, because people will come and say, you know, this happened, and she did this, and that's what she's thinking. And it's like, well, what's another possibility? And it's amazing how people sort of tilt their head on one side and go, but there's another possibility.
What do you mean?
And then when they get thinking, it changes their perspective. It's amazing.
Right. I give people a trick. I call it the 3 reason rule. It's not a very sexy name, but that's what I tell people. Like when you make an assumption, if you don't have data to back up your thought, think of 3 other reasons. And it's the same concept. It kind of snaps you out of that, and, you know, brings the emotion component down. And yeah, that's great. So I have another question here. In the beginning, you talked about LinkedIn learning courses. I think maybe we just want to hear a little bit more about those. You know, what maybe just in summary, what the topics are, a little bit more information.
Yeah. so anyone who has a paid membership link in Julianne, I don't know if it's me that's frozen.
Yeah, I think you went a little transformer on me, but you're back now.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes, so there's 3 courses out there at the moment. The first one is based on the book. So it is from project manager to project motivator.
Nice.
That came out in the middle of last year. And so it's kind of a shortened version of the book. All of the courses are eligible for PMI PDUs as well. So that's very positive because they're very much targeted at project managers. And that's what LinkedIn Learning wanted to do, is they wanted some materials that were for project managers, not just for the world at large. And then the second one's about mindfulness and how critical mindfulness is to project managers and how we can build it into our everyday so that it doesn't become another task, another chore, but that we can be using it as we go through the day. The third one is about burnout, what causes it, and the fact that my belief is that it's very prevalent in project management, but for various reasons, no one measures it there. You know, it gets measured in, and quite rightly so, it gets measured in teachers and medical professionals and counselors and people like that, those high touch professions. But people forget that project management is a high touch profession as well. And one of the statistics that we share in that is that my team of 110 people, if I just took that team, that was 5,995 potential lines of communication. And as a project and program manager, while I don't have to be involved in every one of those lines of communication, I do need to know the net result because it's going to steer the project. That's a high touch profession. And so, you know, it's something that doesn't get measured, and I would like to see that change. So that's the third course. And then I'm just working on the new course, which is bravery for project managers. That builds on what I was saying, that I think bravery is very important for project managers, especially if you're going to share news that other people don't want to hear. And that we have more of it than we think. So I want to build on that of showing people that they actually deal with more discomfort than they think they do. And when they are dealing with discomfort, they're being brave.
Right. That's great. Well, thank you for that. So I don't see any other questions coming through. So I think we can move towards wrapping it up. And I really want to thank you for your time today and providing this great information about ALLE. If people are interested in learning more after our time here today, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, the best way is to email me at Ruth Pearce. Yeah, Ruth Pearce at projectmotivator.com. It's up on the slide there. You can always find me on LinkedIn, and I'm very responsive on LinkedIn. People joke about the fact that I seem to live on LinkedIn, but if you private message me on LinkedIn, I'll always respond. Or if you make a comment somewhere and tag me, I will always respond. And then I mentioned earlier that you can check out more details about all of us on the ALLE-LLC.org website. Or join us at our LinkedIn Live event that will be on the 1st of June. We'd love to see you there and answer more of your questions, or sign up for the for the group coaching drop-in. It's going to be a combination of preventing burnout and also reversing burnout. So you don't actually have to be burned out in order to participate in that community. So
wonderful. Well, I think that wraps us up. Concludes our spotlight on ALLE today. So I just want to encourage our audience to be sure to join us next time when we highlight another great service organization. We'll have details out on the PMO Leader website and out in social media as we get closer to next month's event. So thanks again, Ruth, for your time. Really enjoyed our conversation today. And all of you out there, have a great day and stay safe. Thank you.
Bye.